Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello and welcome to Keto Life Support. This is Kim Howerton, and this is episode number 123. Today, we're going to talk about why you're not seeing the progress that you think you should, even though your diet is pretty dialed in. What do I mean by progress? Well, I find people usually, almost always, their reasons for taking on their ketogenic, low carb, or really any diet is one of two reasons, or both of these reasons. A, they would like to lose body fat. B, they would like to improve their health. Often it's A and B, but sometimes it's just B. And sometimes people, just to be honest, it's just A. But both of them have some similar things in common. Now, I will say, one of the things I have observed of late, or of always, is that often people who are like, I'm going to take the diet on, I'm going to do this diet, I'm going to improve it, they go real deep into the diet part, right? And they're confused why they aren't seeing all the success that they want to. And I would like to offer, it is possible that your diet is as good as it needs to be. That maybe you just keep circling around is not as helpful as if you realize that your diet is as dialed in as it really needs to be, and there are some other things we need to work on beyond diet. Now, I'm not saying that I know that about you, because I can't see you, right? But there are a lot of you where you're out there obsessing about very detailed things about your diet, but you're not working at all on some other things that we're going to talk about today. And if you spend all your time thinking about, well, is it 8 grams of this or 7? Is it 1% of this is going to make a difference? What about, do I have an intolerance to this other thing that I just can't tell, right? I see that a lot. And I'm not saying intolerances don't exist. I'm not saying that food doesn't matter. Of course it matters. You got to lay the foundation. If your foundation isn't solid, nothing else is going to really work. And food is foundational, in my opinion. However, there is a point at which your foundation is probably solid enough. And if you're still not experiencing the kind of success that you want in terms of either your weight or your health, then it's time, or probably past time, to look at the other pillars of health that I find a lot of us neglect. What are those pillars? Sleep, stress, and movement. I know I am the bearer of bad news here, people. But let's talk a little bit first about sleep. So I will put a study that I have read in the notes, and I'm probably butchering these names, but we've got Jean-Philippe Chaput and Angelo Tremblay on adequate sleep to improve the treatment of obesity. They looked at a couple of different studies, specifically one where they put people on a crossover study, which means in this one, they took overweight adults and they put them in 2 weeks of restricting their sleep to 5.5 hours and 2 weeks of 8.5 hours, which they consider, good sleep. And then they switched the groups. So they looked at them under different circumstances. And they calorie restricted everybody. And they found that when they restricted people's sleep, people in every phase of the study actually did lose weight, scale weight. So that's good news, you'd think. When they were sleep restricted, they lost, quote, 55% less body fat and 60% more fat-free mass. Oh, that's not good. Let me explain what that means for those of you that don't know. Think about your body as two parts. You got all your body fat and then everything else, your fat-free mass, which makes sense, right? Fat mass, fat-free mass. everything but the fat. Some people call fat-free mass lean body mass as well. Same thing. I will say, whenever you lose weight, you want to lose body fat. You do not want to lose lean body mass or fat-free mass. What is fat-free mass? Think about it. It's your organs, your skin, your nails, your muscles, your hair, like it's everything, your bones, right? Now, it's normal to lose a little bit of fat-free mass. And in fact, if you're very obese, losing a little bit of organ weight, your organs getting a little smaller, that's appropriate, right? So you're not trying to keep any lean mass loss from happening, but you're trying to limit it because we really don't want to lose bone or muscle mass. And if you go to extreme in terms of losing that fat-free mass, you're going to be losing some weight from those areas, which we do not want to lose. So the fact that these participants, though they lost weight on the scale when sleep restricted, most of that, or much more than we want it to be, was lean mass, which is going to include muscle mass. And less of it was body fat, means that the sleep restricted group, by the end of the study, might have been in worse shape in terms of their body composition ratio. That's not what we want at all. The people that got decent amount of sleep, they were losing weight in the way we hope to, which is mostly losing fat mass and just losing a small amount of lean mass. And so that's a big deal to know about. Also, in other studies, they mentioned that over like a 6-month weight loss program, people who had both better subjective sleep quality. So they said, their sleep was good sleep. We've all had like a bad sleep night, right? So they had subjectively high sleep quality scores. They spent time in REM sleep, that kind of thing. Or they slept more than 7 hours. So they had longer sleep. Those people lost 33% more body weight. So sleep is crucial for fat loss, either in terms of just total pounds lost or where those pounds are coming from in terms of body composition. So hopefully you knew this already. And I think with sleep, I'll be honest, when I talk to my clients, a lot of people feel pretty at the mercy of sleep issues. And I get that it's very hard to fix some sleep issues, but there is some low-hanging fruit in terms of improving your sleep. I'm going to go into detail about that on the sleep podcast, which is coming soon. But I think I've shown here that sometimes we can just keep pushing the same button, but you've pushed that button as much as you can in terms of your diet. Now you have to really say, hey, I'm going to take on these new projects. And one of those is gotta be sleep quality. Okay, so now we've talked about sleep. The next one I'm going to talk about is actually movement. I'm saving stress for last for a reason I will tell you in a minute. But movement, okay, I get it. I get that you're all instantly mad at me about this one because I am mad at myself about this one. Part of the real appeal when I first started my ketogenic diet was hearing people say, this diet is different. On this diet, you don't really have to exercise. And I was like, sign me up. I don't want to exercise. And in fact, even the word exercise can be very triggering for some people, which is why I'm trying to use the word movement. But it's sad. It's a sad, sad truth, people, that a lot of us, I think, have been kind of traumatized by the idea of exercise in our lives. It's felt very burdensome. But here's what I got to tell you. Our bodies were designed to move. We, as a human, are designed to be in motion most of the time. When we're resting, we're supposed to be resting, but we're not supposed to be resting most of the time. We're supposed to be moving most of the time. And so when we are sedentary most of the time, we get into some problems. And it's going to cause problems in terms of blood sugar management, in terms of like the way our body feels, how well it does things, being able to lift things, move things, our blood pressure, cancer risk. I mean, really across the board, lack of movement plays a role in chronic and long-term health conditions and also weight management issues. You can't really get away from it. You can't really cheat this system. Can you lose some weight while doing no exercise? Absolutely. Can you lose a lot of weight while doing no exercise? Absolutely. Can you lose a lot of weight and maintain a good body composition while doing no exercise? Most likely not. Not usually likely. And so, as we talked about in the sleep section, you have to include movement to have better body composition. Now, you can move towards better body composition just with diet alone. You can absolutely do that. But to really, truly get to a place you want to be, right? So if you're very, very obese, if you have a lot of body fat, the initial stages of fat loss can be tackled without much movement, which is great because often when we're very, very obese, movement is very challenging, right? When you have a lot of body fat, doing much movement can be very hard. Your joints aren't really up to it because of how much weight you're carrying. And so I do think you don't have to exercise if you're in a very large body. Now, I do think doing some movement, more movement than you're currently doing, right? It's a graduated scale, is going to be helpful. But I also don't think you need to be killing it in the gym when you have hundreds of pounds to lose. Really just getting up and walking around your house is probably a lot more exercise than you're used to if you're basically not doing that now. It's more about progress than it is about doing it perfectly. That being said, the leaner we become, so if we've gone part way on our journey, but not all the way on our journey of fat loss, right? The more these body composition issues become known to us. Because as sort of the pounds of body fat start to leave and you become maybe more in the overweight rather than obese category, it becomes more and more apparent that just losing the weight is not getting you into the body you want to be in necessarily, which time dialing in better body composition, again, the ratio of muscle to body fat or lean body to body fat becomes more and more important. And it's very challenging to get that dialed in the more overweight category than the obese category, unless you're also including appropriate kinds of movement in your life. So from a health perspective, this is also true in terms of even if you don't have any, like you weigh exactly what you think you should weigh on the scale, you might still have more body fat than you want and less muscle mass than you want, right? You might want to weigh 140 pounds and you weigh 140 pounds, but you have 40% body fat. You have body composition goals that need to change to optimize your outcome. Not even from a weight perspective, just from a health perspective. And so getting an appropriate amount of movement is important on the weight aspect. And in other ways, in terms of blood pressure management, blood sugar management, cancer risk, all the things I mentioned earlier, all sorts of chronic conditions as well, these will be impacted by you improving your body's movement habits. And what do I mean by movement? Well, that could simply be getting up and walking more. Walking is an amazing benefit, but also maybe working on your cardiovascular fitness, working on your ability to do aerobic training. And then also, for a lot of us, very central is working on your muscle mass, increasing strength and increasing the amount of muscle on your body. Putting effort into these arenas is central to being a healthy person. Can't really get around it. The good news is it's all incremental. What do I mean by that? Well, a little more than you did before is progress. And what really matters in this category is that you're making constant progress. So if you're new And if you're completely sedentary, some is a huge benefit compared to none. So we're just inching our way towards more every day. Now, if you're already super fit and doing a lot, that's awesome. There is going to be a point at which you probably don't want to do more, right? But I'm going to say that probably most of you listening are not that audience. So you know who you are if you're already a high achiever in this arena. Some of you are, and that is awesome, and I salute you. But if you're not a person who's doing at least a good amount, what is a good amount? Well, let's talk about that. I would classify, what I would say is a goal for the average human as doing around 150 minutes a week of like what one would call more like cardiovascular exercise. That can be like walking at an appropriate pace, or if you're fairly fit, then running. Again, it's about progress. It's getting your heart rate up a bit, but not necessarily sky high, right? But about 150 minutes of that a week, and between 2 and 3 resistance training sessions a week where you're working all your major muscle groups at least once, but probably twice a week, sort of as a minimum level of what we're trying to achieve. Now, because this area has been such an issue in my life, I put a lot of attention on it starting this year. I delayed a long time, so don't feel like it's ever too late out there, people. And in fact, I've just joined a 9-month-long certification program around this topic so that I can continue to help people more. So coming in the future, but I'm going to continue to talk about it where I can. This is an area I'm more of a novice in, and I would like to get more training. And so that's what I'm doing so that I can continue to help people with their questions. Now we know, right? Okay, so we've talked about stress and we've talked about movement being really important. And so if you find yourself just constantly not doing these things, again, I just want to say improvement counts. Doesn't have to look perfect. If you're getting 0 hours of activity, then add 1 this week, right? Across the whole week, right? That's like 10 minutes a day or even less, 8, right? It's just some progress is all that matters. If your sleep isn't good, it's getting maybe to bed 10 minutes earlier, right? We're just going to make progress in these areas. Rome was not built in a day. All right, let's talk about the last pillar that I find people kind of neglecting in the ketogenic community. The last one I'm going to talk about is stress. I saved this one for last because, well, the first 2 things I talked about actually go in this category as well. So ways that you can improve your stress. Let me first start by saying a lot of you might be pissed at me for bringing this up. Sort of like sleep, you kind of feel victimized by it. You're like, I can't affect my stress because crap happens. I'm like, aha. So stress doesn't mean bad things happening. Stress specifically refers to your reaction to these things in your life. And it's not just bad things. Good things can cause stress too. A new job, right? It's a good thing, but you might feel stressed out about it. So stress, I will say in this context, is our reaction to events. And that reaction is a stress response, right? And so you do have some control in this arena of stress. I get that we have reactions to things that happen. And I get that the optimum, like we all know people who don't seem fazed by anything. And those people seem annoying because they seem like they don't care about anything. So I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about never being upset, never acknowledging bad things. Actually, acknowledging bad things can help you reduce your stress. But I am talking about managing our physiological and emotional responses to events and things that are happening in our lives. So, that might be, like I said, it could be good things or bad things. Nothing is all one thing, right? Like the birth of a child, very happy event, but gosh, that can cause some real stress increases in your household, right? So we have to look at how do we manage that stress level, because stress contributes to many chronic health conditions, and stress can also have a very negative impact on your weight loss efforts. So how do we manage stress? Well, there are a couple of things that have been shown to help. So the first one is talking about what's going on. I'm not talking about like endlessly bitching about it, although that can be fun in short sprints, but really just getting your perspective out to somebody, whether that's a good friend, a friend who's not in that same situation with you, or a therapist, someone who can hear what's going on with you and just be a sounding board for you. Now, that could also look like journaling about what's going on. It doesn't necessarily even have to be speaking it, but getting it out of your head, out of that rumination, circling inside your head process, out of you, out of your body, out of your mouth, out of your fingers on paper, right? The second one would be meditation. Actually can be very beneficial. Not all of us are great at it, but that's the good news. You don't have to be great at it. Just doing it is all that really matters. And there can be some very good online meditation. There are lots of forms of meditation. There's walking meditation, there's sitting meditation. I'll put some meditation resources in the notes, but taking on a bit of a meditation practice. What do I mean by practice? Well, a lot of these things are what I would call practices. That means something you're doing repeatedly. It's not just you do it once and you're fixed. You have a daily practice or a weekly practice, right? It's a pattern of this behavior because it's all about managing your stress levels. It's not like you can fix them. So we're doing things like meditation. It could be, and this is why I save this one for last, things like improving your sleep and your movement practices. Walking is a fabulous way to manage stress, and getting better sleep also is very helpful because we all know if we've had a bad night of sleep, we're a little testy, right? It's actually going to decrease our ability to manage stress, increase our perception of being stressed out, right? So we're working on movement, we're working on sleep quality and duration. We're doing some therapy or journaling or talking it out with people that are good listeners, not talking it out with people that increase your stress. We're doing things like meditation, also things like massage, hot baths, just types of things that you can regularly do that kind of give you a space where you're relaxing, you're letting yourself be a little more relaxed and getting a little distance from the ruminations in your head. So managing the stress in your life can be very helpful in terms of improved health outcomes and improved weight loss. So today we dove in a little bit about the 3 things you might be neglecting on your health and weight loss journey, and just bringing awareness to the fact that if you're not contemplating improvements in all of these categories, you're probably just leaving a lot on the table in terms of how healthy and happy you could be in your life. And so I'm going to be coming to you in upcoming episodes going into more depth on things you can do in these categories. But starting right away, you can start to just look at if these areas of your life need some attention. All right, thank you for joining me today. I will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.